After two blockbusters in the 2000s and an ill-fated reboot attempt in 2019, Hellboy returned to the big... Well, actually, they cancelled the theatrical release, so Hellboy returned to the small screen in 2024. And Hellboy just happens to be Tim's favourite thing ever. So here we are. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Ah yes, always nice to have you guesting on the show, Tim. It's only been about 630 episodes or something. So yes, welcome everyone. It's a horror movie podcast. We get together, we talk about a horror film. It's that simple. And today is our last stop before we finally do our top 10 horror movies of 2024, which is what next week's episode is going to be. So I'll just say that up front. But a promise was made on a stream that for Tim's sake, because he's a huge fan of the franchise and the character, that before we got to the top 10, that we would review last year's Hellboy the Crooked Man, which is what we're here to do today.
It just makes sense, you want to make sure to hit all the big, tentpole movies of the year. So, like, people, would be questioning it if we didn't cover it.
Yes, I'm sure people were lining up, sending their angry emails. Where's Hellboy the Crooked Man's episode of Screams After Midnight? Because initially we weren't going to do this because, one, I felt it was a little bit, even though it was more horror focused going by the trailer and that, I thought it was a bit weird because it's like the fourth Hellboy movie, even though it's a complete, reboot. It's not connected to the other ones in any way. But also because it did not review very well. It looked pretty bad. So I was quite happy to just sort of not do it. But then stream things happened, promises were made. I have to give this as a gift to Tim. So today we talk about Hellboy the Crooked Man. We'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers. And if you want to support the show and get some bonus content every while you can go and do that on Patreon. But I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode and whatnot. But this is, so Tim's a super Hellboy fan. He's been reading the comics for decades at this point. He's all up in the Hellboy. He knows his stuff. I have read maybe 1.5 arcs of Hellboy in my life.
Oh, we're gonna faint. I can't even imagine such a sad life.
Of course, my first exposure was the Guillermo del Toro movie in 2004, which I thought was pretty mediocre at the time. And the sequel, I think I saw. I don't really remember it in any way, shape, or form, but I think I saw it.
I can't.
There was the reboot movie in 2019, which was pretty dreadful, with David Harbour as Hellboy. Not that he was bad, he was fine, but like the movie just was gobshite. So
did you watch it?
Tim, did we not review that together on another show? I'm pretty sure we did.
I legitimately don't remember.
I think it was me, you, and Matt maybe did a review of that in a show that doesn't exist anymore.
Okay, yeah, that does sound vaguely familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
I'm glad that your eyes saw that.
I'm not. I'm not happy about it. So, needless to say, that movie was not good. I didn't like the Del Toro ones very much. They were just a bit too light. Now, to be fair, what little comics I read, I actually did think were better than any of the movies that I've seen. Because there was just better atmosphere. They felt like they were more grounded and less, blockbustery, lighthearted and all that stuff, which is what my main problem with the movies was. But not that any of that really matters. I'm just giving some background here for where we both stand. For the record, Tim, the previous Hellboy movies, just quickly, if you want to hit me with some ratings as I say them out of 10. Hellboy 1?
10.
Hellboy 2?
10.
Hellboy 2019?
10.
There may be a bit of a bias coming into this review from one of his audience. I just want to point that out. The evidence has been laid out before you.
If you check my letterbox, I have committed to giving any Hellboy movie 5 stars and a little heart. So you know where I'm coming from.
Even this one?
Well, all right. So if I'll give like a little backstory and some lead up here.
All right, get comfortable, everyone. This is probably going to be a good 20-minute saga. On you go.
If you need a bathroom break or get some water or something, feel free now. But yeah, so I mean, we're joking about my love for the character, but if people are just tuning in now or don't really, know much about me outside the podcast or whatever, like you were saying, like Hellboy is just my absolute favorite thing in the world. And if you know me, as much as I love movies, I'm a pretty big movie buff, but comic books are kind of like my one true love, and they really started from actually the first Hellboy movie, because growing up I always loved comic book related stuff, but I never lived anywhere near a comic book store, so I never actually read comics. But I did see the Hellboy movie on the night it came out. I didn't even know anything about it. My brother randomly asked me if I wanted to go, and I was like, sure. And it was just like watching it, like a switch flipped for me. And
your brother has so much to answer for. Just to think, if he hadn't said, hey, do you want to go see that new Hellboy movie, I wouldn't have been forced to watch this all these years later.
That's true. The chain of the butterfly effect that could have happened there. But yeah, no, it was just, I love the character so much, and I knew okay, it's based on a comic. I need to devour everything that is available of this, and that's what got me to go into a comic book store, and I read every Hellboy related thing. And then once that was through, I started making my way through other comics. I remember they had this wizard thing that was a free 100 most important graphic novels or whatever, and I started making my way through those, and that's when I got exposed to so many different superhero stuff, and then that got me reading DC and Marvel regularly, and so blah blah blah. Basically, that's why Hellboy has such a place in my heart, because it kind of ignited this passion in me for comic books, which I don't know if I would have otherwise. I don't know, there's so much superhero stuff that I would have been seeing all those movies anyway, but I don't know how much I would have been tracking down books or actually going into comic book stores after them. So that's where my love comes from. And then on a serious note, giving out all of them 10 out of 10. I actually did rewatch all the movies leading up to this, or at least the live action ones. There's 2 animated ones, which I enjoy for what they are, but not as much as the live action ones. But the first one has a special place in my heart because of what it introduced to me, but I do think it is a pretty flawed film. I think it's fun, and there's a lot to admire about it. I think Del Toro really gets the characters in the world, but it definitely is a bit of a different tone than the books, and he changes some stuff with the story, but I think he does it in a way that makes it very enjoyable. And I also think it makes for a good adaptation versus you don't just want to copy everything. That's very boring. And then when they do just try to copy stuff right from the book, you get stuff like the 2019 movie. But so that being said, I like the first one, but I do think there's stuff about it that doesn't age the best, and it has some issues. But the second one is full Del Toro, and I think that one is just so much fun and expands the world in such a great way. And to me, that is a personal favorite of mine. I would give that a pretty high score. And then it really pains me that it ends on a cliffhanger, so that they never got to finish out the trilogy or whatever. But
that's a shame.
I know. I mean, you mock, but there are people that on online that want it,
There are dozens of you, dozens.
We're much more polite than like the Snyder fan people though, so we don't like we don't bug anyone. So then I was pretty surprised, when they announced the 2019 version. But I do think that is it's a very bad movie, but I also think it is an immensely fun bad movie. I kind of put it up there with stuff like Troll 2 or the Room or whatever, because it is just, I don't know, it's extremely absurd and there's so many like dumb parts and lines and stuff, and they just completely like misinterpret, I feel like, the tone and the character. Like that one's funny because they are copying like direct stories from the books, but like they do it in such a way that it's just like, they're I don't know, they're trying to make it like heavy metal, like rock, and like trying to be like hardcore and stuff. And so and I saw that with like a bunch of friends, so like we were like laughing at it the whole time. So like that one also has like a place in my heart, even though I do acknowledge it's bad. In fact, it's very bad, but I do think it is like enjoyably bad, as fun movies go. But I was pretty sure after that we would never see another Hellboy movie.
Oh
like,
yeah, that one like made no money. That tanked like spectacularly so.
But I don't know. I guess maybe I'm just like a good person, but like I feel like the universe. Like the universe tends to like gift these things to me sometimes. I feel like I was shocked when it must have been like late 2023 when they announced that they were making this movie, and for me it was just like a roller coaster, because you would find out like some detail and you're like, ooh, that sounds good, and then you find out another detail and you're like, ooh, that sounds bad. Where it's like they're making a new Hellboy movie. Like, oh, that's great. And and it's going to be released by Ketchup Entertainment. We're all like, wait, who? Like, what is this? I mean, I feel like now they kind of have some goodwill because like they're the, company that's like saving the Looney Tunes movies or whatever, which is cool or whatever. But like at the time it was just like, wait, I don't get this. Is it because like Ketchup's red and Hellboy's red? Like, is there anything to this? But then you'd hear like, oh, it's going to be based on The Crooked Man, which like is a personal favorite story of mine. So it's like, oh, I hear that. That's awesome. And then it's going to be directed by one of the Crank guys. And you're kind of like, oh, I think that's bad. And then they're like, oh, but it's going to be written by, Mike Mignola and Christopher Golden. Like, oh, like those are great writers. And obviously Mike Mignola is the creator of Hellboy. So there's, a lot of chance for the script to be really good. And then you're like, oh, and then, here's the guy that, we got to play Hellboy. And you're like, oh, I have no idea who that is. So I kind of kept going like, I mean, obviously I'm going to see it no matter what. And I'm going to be excited to see it no matter what. But
well, not in theaters if you're in the US, Tim.
Unfortunately, no. So this is another thing that was like that's actually like really interesting about it is for the longest time it had this like release date and I was like looking forward to it, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna be there as early as I can be. If there's a midnight release, I'm going. And as we're getting like closer and closer, I'm like checking like all the different ticket websites and stuff, and like I'm starting to get nervous. I'm like, oh, it's like it's not showing up. And then I would think at least one of the advantages of living in like LA is that even if it's like a small release or something, usually there'll be like, some theater around here that'll have it. But there was nothing. And then, sadly, we got the news that they're pulling it from theaters in the US. I legitimately was like looking to see if it'd be a possibility to go see it in Mexico, where it was playing. But unfortunately, I had to decide against that.
It can't mean that much to you, Tim. Come on. There's no way you actually considered crossing the border.
if I had like enough like friends that were like, hell yeah, let's do this, like we'll go party it up in Mexico and and then go catch the movie, like I probably would have done it.
Tim, does it upset you to know that I remember checking my cinema around whatever time it was last year for something else, and I saw showtimes for this, and was like, "Don't think I will," and kept on scrolling.
I mean, yeah, that's a little infuriating, but so the funny thing is like at this point I'm starting to get nervous because I'm like, well, I mean, obviously, again, I want to see it, but they must clearly like not be happy with it if they're not doing any release, and it's strange to me because like it had theatrical trailers and stuff. It's like I would understand if like they were never planning on releasing it or whatever, but like I would see the trailers at other movies and stuff, so it seemed like that they were going to do it, and then it just I guess decided at the last minute not to or whatever, or the fact that other countries got it. But then
ketchup just has such high standards, you see. That's the thing.
I guess, yeah. I mean, they legitimately might have just like run out of money. Like,
it's possible.
But then something kind of funny happened is that when it was getting its international release, I'm part of like some Hellboy Facebook groups, of course, and I started getting like a lot of people like posting about it, saying like, hey, you know what, it's actually like pretty good. Like there's some like flaws, and there's some things here and there, and obviously like its budget is low and you can tell, but like as far as like the Hellboyness of it goes, like seems like people are getting pretty happy. And obviously I'm like, okay, so this is good news, but this is obviously just coming from like Hellboy fans. Like, if you're posting on a Hellboy fan group, then obviously you're predisposed to like it. So I still had a little trouble trusting it, but I was pretty excited going into it. So now I can, I guess, reveal my opinion on the movie.
Can I just say first?
Yeah.
There was more tension and gravitas to that story, and like the nerves you had, the worry you had, were more potent there than any time you've ever told me about your children being born or on the run up to getting married. Those life events were nothing apparently compared to the fourth Hellboy movie maybe not coming out.
Well, I mean, there's certain things in life, like I'm pretty confident, like, yeah, my kids will be good and stuff. Like like this is such an unknown quantity that it's it's something that could like haunt your life if done improperly.
Also, it's actually funny that I assumed for whatever reason you started reading comic books way before I did, but it was only a year before I did, because I started reading them when Batman Begins came out. So
okay, yeah. I mean, the way I always describe it is like I'm a lifelong comic book fan, but I just never had access to comic books, like because at the time, like online wasn't as big a thing, and maybe if they might have had like some at like bookstores and stuff I went to, but I didn't really know what to read and stuff. But I mean, I always loved like the cartoon shows growing up, like Batman and X-Men, and I would get like trading cards and action figures. So like I knew the superhero. Oh, and like Ninja Turtles like was one of my favorite things, like growing up. That was kind of like one of the first franchise things that I got into. So yeah, like I liked all that stuff from the exposure that I had to. I just was never around the actual comics, but I think if there was like a store near me, I would have devoured those, like when I could. But yeah, no, I mean, I would say that's funny as well, because it's such a big part of my life, and it's, I mean, especially moving now, it's like thousands of books, and I actually now I'm like questioning, like, oh, maybe this wasn't such a good thing to get into, just because how much space and what a chore it's been. But
so have the comics been moved to the new house, or are they waiting? Are they like, have they been put in the back burner because they're not important?
No. They're all there. It's just been such an task to undertake, and right now they're filling like multiple closets. They're in just books scattered everywhere. I have like a small like semi-attic room that is basically going to be like my comic book room, which I'll share some pictures like when it's done and ready, but that's still being like worked on. But once that's kind of done, I'm going to try to move everything up there which hopefully can have most of everything. But yeah, I look forward to having my own little comic space I can just go to escape everything when I need to.
Is this separate from the podcast room? Are you going to have a podcast room and a comic book room?
I mean, we'll see. I could podcast from the comic book room, but then I don't know. It might be a little secret. I don't know how much I want to sully it.
Well, part of me thinks attic sounds like it might not sound good because of like an echo, but I also think that all those comics might absorb the sound, so it may not actually be that echo.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Anyway, all right, Tim, put us out of our misery. What did you think of Hellboy, the Crooked Man?
So, again, I was going in.
Actually, just before you actually start your thing, we're 20 minutes into the recording. What did you think of the movie? You may proceed.
All right. So I did have low expectations going in because, again, it's Hellboy, so I know I'm gonna love it from a fanboy perspective. But I am, as much as we could, I am able to separate that, and in some instances, from the cinema lover in me. Like, I complain about a lot of comic book movies. I don't blindly love every comic book thing that comes out just because I love the character or whatever. Maybe I'm a bit more biased with Hellboy than typical superhero stuff, but I can still recognize when there's flaws and stuff. So, I mean, judging from the trailer and again, like the reviews weren't great and all that stuff. So I was excited to see it, but I was a little nervous going in. But I was trying to keep my expectations low because it seemed like that's kind of what people were saying. And honestly, I gotta say, I think, well, I guess the way to put it is I do like it. And I actually do think it is pretty good for like what it's doing, but I do think there's like expectations and stuff that have to be like evolved. For me, as much as I would have loved to have seen this in the theater, I can understand why they decided not to like release it, because I think a normal audience, if they're going like, oh, Hellboy movie, like I remember those from like 10 or so, or I mean, almost 20 years ago, I guess at this point, like, oh, like I have some fondness for those, and like I'll see the next one, and then I feel like they would probably be like a little disappointed, but like I feel like if this was something that, and this might sound like damning to say, but like if this was like a sci-fi original movie that you kind of just like stumbled upon on like a Saturday night or something on TV, I feel like you would be like, oh wow, this is like better than it kind of has any right to be. And so I don't know, I think that the budget definitely shows in this, which is probably what a lot of people's like complaints and stuff are. It is very Hellboy, which I don't know, if you're not a fan of the character or the comics, I don't know how well that's going to play to you. But I mean, as a fan, especially as a fan of this story, which again, as I said, it's like one of my favorite Hellboy stories. It's very standalone, which I like. I kind of like that the stakes are a little smaller. Like it's not like the other movies where it's like this big apocalyptic, like, oh, we gotta save the whole world stuff. Like Hellboy kind of has like this, the comics, like they have these overarching stories of like Hellboy himself, which usually involves like his demon side and like trying to prevent the apocalypse and like all this stuff. And then you kind of have these like other like one-off kind of stories like this, which are just these like standalone adventures, which I kind of like more sometimes than like the main plot of the series, because they're just fun and like they're one and done and whatnot. But I mean, it's very faithful to the comics, which makes sense because again, Mike Mignola is doing it, or he wrote the script or whatever. So I liked it from that. Again, I'm not gonna say, oh, it's Hellboy, so it's perfect or whatever, blah blah blah. But I do think, like, surprisingly, that it's actually like not as bad as like people would think. Again, I'm a fan, so I'm predisposed to like it. But I think if people give it a chance, like if you have a vague interest in the character and you go in knowing like, okay, this is like a lower budget movie or whatever. I mean, again, not everyone's gonna like it, but I think more people would be surprised. Like, oh, like it's not like just some bad cheapo thing or whatever. I think who's the guy that plays Hellboy? Is it like Jack Kempsey or something like that, or Kelso or something?
Kesy? Kesy? I'm not sure how you pronounce that.
I had no idea who he was before, but I thought he did a pretty decent job, with Hellboy. I thought that his makeup looks like fine. It's definitely better than the 2019 one. I don't know what happened with that, but the makeup and David Harbour I think would actually be a really good fit for Hellboy, but I don't know, the makeup just looks so off on that. I don't know if they were trying like too hard to get it away from like the Ron Perlman look. But I really don't like the 2019 look at all. But I thought this one was like pretty decent. I like his like companion in this, Bobby Joe. I thought she did a good job. And then and it's also just like the kind of story I like. Like I like Appalachian, like kind of creepy witch campfire stories. I think there's like a lot of cool moments in it. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from. I definitely recommend it to people if they have like an interest in the character. But again, I'm just like damning it with faint praise or whatever. But like if you go in with like low expectations and knowing what it is, and that, and then obviously it's much more low budget and like the effects aren't going to be great and stuff. Like I actually think that you can have a good time with this. But again, beware, because maybe I'm just a fanboy with hearts in his eyes that can't see past the faults. But I know I'm not alone, because again, there's plenty of Hellboy fans that have shared similar sentiments.
Again, dozens of you. I mean, where do I start? I mean, it does that thing now where you go to start a movie and it'll tell you the Rotten Tomatoes score, and the IMDb score is like sitting right there, and it's like 36% on Rotten Tomatoes and like a 4.5 on IMDb, and I'm like, this does not bode well. Like, obviously I don't always agree with the critical consensus or whatever, but it's hard to get excited about a movie that's under the halfway mark. It's hard to get hype for it. I think on paper, this is the sort of Hellboy movie that I would be more into if it wasn't so goddamn boring, is kind of my big thing. Like, I don't even feel like I mind the budget per se, although it does have this really cheap look to it. Like, it looks like a fan movie. Right? And like right away, it just has that fan movie look. Like a couple of students just got out of film school and they said, we want to do a Hellboy. They've got enough money to do some decent Hellboy makeup, but it has that look to it. And I also feel like the writer, whoever it was, I don't know if it was the director who was also writing this, or adapting it, maybe more accurate. Now, Christopher Golden, and the director also, it was there, yeah.
And Mike Mignola also wrote the script.
Oh, did he? Would he actually work? Because he would be getting a credit here anyway, just for, based on so and so. But he actually worked on the script.
And Christopher Golden has also like he's another like writer who I think is friends with Mignola, but he's worked on like Hellboy stuff before, like comic book stuff, and like he's done like some like prose novels with Hellboy. So he obviously is someone like familiar with the character too.
Because I gotta be honest here, Tim, all this southern like backwood dialect that they love having characters monologue in was putting me to sleep, and it was making it very difficult for me to pay attention to what they were saying. And because so much of this movie doesn't really revolve around Hellboy or his companion, who I think are a bit more interesting, it all revolves around this character named Tom, who's got like his own thing going on with some witches, and that's kind of what the plot ends up being. And honestly, like, I could not have cared less about this guy. I could not have been less interested in what was going on in his life, what his backstory was, all this stuff that was happening. So by the time we actually got to some more sort of action-packed stuff going down, I was just kind of already so out of it that nothing was really going to bring me back from that point. So Yeah, honestly, the like, I could sit here and give specifics for, why certain things don't work, but ultimately, I just did not care about how this was written. It just did not engage me at all. So I was just bored, and I think especially in the back half, once it started doing a lot more dreamlike stuff, and it was, I found it really hard to pay attention to it at a certain point. So I gotta be honest, I kind of hated it, Tim. I kind of hated it.
I mean, that's fair. If I wouldn't want you to lie. I mean, I'm quitting the podcast, obviously. I mean, this will be
obviously
the last episode, but I mean, I appreciate the honesty. I mean, no, it's I guess I don't appreciate you insulting my one of my country's preeminent accents. The Appalachian Southern accent is a proud American dialect. So I'll disagree with you on that, but no, I'm kidding, obviously. But I mean, to me though, I kind of liked, like, I don't know, I feel like this is a setting like get in like a lot of like horror like stuff. So, well, I mean, I guess there's plenty of like Southern horror movies and stuff, but like, I don't know, I like to me I kind of like that it's a little bit of a different setting, and
to be clear though, like, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be an accent, like that's not so much the problem. Right. It's that they really love the idea of the Southern drawl doing these stories of their past. So you get like monologues from Tom talking about his youth and finding a witch and like his time in the war and stuff like that. Or the witches all have these accents as well, and they go on little monologues. It's more just how wordy it is. Like, they're clearly in love with the idea of someone with this accent like telling a horror story, and I was like, I'm just not enthralled because of that. Like, you need to have better dialogue for me to like get into it. Maybe some better acting as well wouldn't I want to miss. But that's that's a whole other category to go into.
Yeah, I mean, again, it might just be a preference thing, but I actually really like that aspect of it. Like, this is kind of a classic Hellboy story you get where it's not necessarily about Hellboy, but he kind of stumbles upon or gets like thrown into these otherworldly situations, and then he ends up saving the day or whatever. But again, like, those are stories that I actually kind of like and enjoy. And for me, I love again, just maybe like a difference between us, but like, I really love like a lot of the lore and stuff that they set up. And again, maybe it's because of having a love of the original story of the comics, or it's in a way that's presented a lot in these different kind of Hellboy stories. So maybe I like it, but I like when you just have like a random character that's doing like this weird aside of this like thing that happened, but it's just like a weird creepy thing that maybe doesn't necessarily impact the story or the characters like that much or whatever. But to me it just kind of like opens up the world, and like I don't know, it's like hearing like a scary campfire story or weird legend or something, which is like stuff that I really eat up. So I mean, if that's not your thing, I can see why there's a lot of it in the movie, so it would be kind of annoying, but like for me, I really dug it.
I mean, I think on paper, I don't think there's anything wrong with what you just said, though. I think it's just down to weak dialogue and a mediocre actor. Honestly, I don't think there's something on like in the concept of what you just said that I dislike. I think that sounds fine. I just don't think that this guy's very compelling, and I'm mainly picking on Tom because he's the one that does it the most, but
sure,
he's not the only one. I just don't think he's that compelling, and as a result, I'm not finding any of the stories he's telling interesting or exciting. Like I can totally see, like, I'm trying to think of a director or someone or a movie that would be a good comparison for what I'm saying. Where this would maybe work better, and I'm having trouble thinking one. But I feel like if you had someone who was better with the dialogue, I could see it working. I could see it building up this idea of like this world that's full of supernatural stuff going on. That clearly, especially around these parts, it's quite common to run into certain things and whatnot. But it feels very, I don't know, like almost like taken for granted here in a weird way. I don't know, it's odd. It's odd. Anyway, what you said?
Well, yeah. I mean, I didn't mind the guy that played Tom. But I mean, I'm not gonna say he's like a necessarily strong actor either. I'm sure if they got someone better, yeah, it probably could have been more compelling, but it didn't necessarily bother me. I will say, like, one thing I will kind of ding it for is like I do. I mean, again, obviously, I'm enjoying it a lot more than you, but I would agree that it could use probably a little like tightening up, and I do think that the last, like, the kind of last act or so is maybe a bit more lackluster than the rest of the movie. Like it does slow down for me. I guess probably about after the let's say like the graveyard scene, which I think is kind of like the big set piece in the movie. After that, I think it does get a bit slower for me. Again, not to the point where I hate it or I'm mad at it or anything. But I can see how the stuff before that might be a bit more compelling. But yeah.
Spoilers, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't really done much of a premise, I guess. So Hellboy and Bobby Joe Song, who's kind of the BPRD agent who's with him, are transporting something across the country in a train. And because they happen to go through this area that has some other supernatural stuff going on, some chaos happens, and they end up kind of investigating what's the local supernatural stuff is. So yeah, they get involved in this story that involves witches and pacts with devils and all that kind of thing. And that's pretty much it. So, well, without spoiling anything anyway. So, yeah. I mean, I've said my piece. I don't, like, I honestly have very little to say about this. This is such a weird beast of a movie that's unique to us as a pair. And that you have this level of passion for it. But to me, this is like, just so uninteresting in the way it's presented. Having nothing to like fall back on, like, you have the original story that you've read to care about, and that's maybe filling in some gaps for you and making things mean more. For me, like, this movie didn't do anything to make me care about any of its story or to care about what was going on. This you even compared it, pardon me, to a sci-fi original movie, and honestly, like, obviously, it's not like a silly story about like a Lavantula or anything, but it definitely feels like kind of in the ballpark of that quality, like a cable TV pilot, but not like a HBO, like a basic cable TV. I guess sci-fi is the one that I'd go to, but like it has that kind of feel to it in a lot of ways, and even the plot, while I do think it's a fine idea for a movie, does sound a lot like Mulder and Scully go to a rural town and there's some creepy stuff going on and they're going to investigate. But this is 100 minutes instead of 45 minutes, and maybe I felt that runtime. I was like, what? Yeah, maybe a TV episode would have felt like a nicer time for this.
It's been like forever since I've seen it, but wasn't that kind of what the second X-Files movie was like? Like, because the first one was obviously like like lore heavy and involved in the show, but then wasn't the second one like just kind of like a random case that was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, well, I've not seen the second movie yet, because or even the first movie.
Never. Oh,
well, I've never
weird.
seen the show. I'm working through it for the first time. I'm on like I'm a chunk into season 3 at the moment, so.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I'm on the maiden voyage, so I don't know too much about the movies yet. I think Billy Connolly's in the second movie. I think I remember that from the marketing, but that's about it.
How like what's your take so far? Are you like, oh my god, I can't believe this was never in my life, or are you like, oh, is this what people have been clamoring about for years?
I mean, somewhere, and I think in between those two. I think it has some really great episodes. But I will say, the end of season 2, start of season 3, episodes, which, you know, the mythology episodes, the main plot, if you will, that was where the main plot started to feel a bit shaky to me, where I'm like, oh, it's very clear at this point already that the best episodes of this show are going to be great standalone episodes because they're cool horror stories, as opposed to the ongoing plot, which already feels like it's getting too convoluted and nonsensical with various things. Although I do laugh almost every episode just how quickly Mulder just jumps to, I bet it's this supernatural thing that's happening. I'm like, Mulder, you leapt to that with very little to go on, and you're always right, which is really annoying. But yeah, that's all.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I probably watched like the whole series through like maybe 2 or 3 times, and it's one of those ones where like I feel like when you remember it, it's like, oh yeah, this is like one of the best series like ever, and then when you actually go back and watch it, like you forget that, oh yeah, like this is back when, you know, seasons were like 22, 24 episodes long, and it's like there's a lot of filler in there. Like there's always episodes that are stand out that are like, oh wow, yeah, this is amazing, and oh, no wonder I remembered this one. And then there's just a lot like, oh yeah, I forgot about this episode or whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's what makes it kind of weird, though, is that I feel like with most other network shows of that length that would have the mythology episodes, but then standalone episodes. Take, for instance, the best of them all, the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Of course, yeah.
Is that the mythology episodes or the main plot episodes were usually the best ones. They were usually the most exciting because the big things were happening that were lasting and had impact. And you'd have great standalone episodes too, but the best ones almost entirely, if you look at any top 10 episodes, 7 or 8 of the 10 are going to be, you know, main plot episodes, and then you'll get 1 or 2 really standout standalones. X-Files feels like the opposite of that, where it's really good standalone episodes that give it all of its credibility. And I already feel that way in season 3, so how I'm going to feel by the time I get to like season 9, we'll see. Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd agree with that. It'll be interesting to see some of, like those really notable ones, how you feel about them. But obviously, I don't want to ruin anything coming up. But yeah, there's definitely like some episodes I still hold in rather high regard.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, spoilers for Hellboy the Crooked Man from this point on. So we'll do that. Yeah, I mean, the movie obviously starts with the big spider thing. Well, it was a small spider, and it becomes a big spider, and Hellboy's like, oh, I think it's because there's evil in these woods. I can sense it. So, like, they go investigating, and they find this hut with this kid who's, like, been cursed by a witch lying on the floor. And they run into Tom, who's just back in town because he's going to go and... Well, he wants to go see his mother and finds out his mother's dead. So he's like, okay, I'm going to go see this old girlfriend who might be a witch now because she might have something to do with all this. Also, there's witch balls.
So, well, real quick, I forget if you mentioned it, but this takes place in 1959. So, like,
good point. Yeah, good. It's good. Worth mentioning that. Yeah.
So, like, obviously, like, yeah, you know, he wouldn't know his mother died because, like, you know, you can't just call someone or whatever. Where you get that? So were you kind of taken aback when they just cut to this like random witch explaining how to make witch balls?
I guess that's the phrase you could use. Yeah, I was definitely like, oh, this is a choice. All right.
So what's funny about that is it's basically a joke in, I forget if it was like the first issue of the Crooked Man story, but one of the Hellboy issues, like after, you know, the issue is done, they have like a little gag page at the end, which is like, oh, I forget what the witch's name, but it's like, oh, you know, this witch will show you how to make a witch ball, and then like, you know, they have like the list of ingredients and stuff. So it was kind of like a joke that they did in the comic. I don't know if like, again, the fanboy in me kind of appreciates it, like, oh, you're calling back that thing from the comic, but I don't know if it's like the best choice for the movie. It is kind of jarring. Yeah,
I mean, I assumed it was going to be more important later, and it never did become more important. So it's like, okay. So they do that. They also, like, so they meet Tom, and Tom's like, yeah, I'll go talk to this character, what's her name, Cora, who's his like old girlfriend. And when they go to her place, and Hellboy and Bobby Joe tag along, they find her skin empty because she's transformed into an animal and is roaming the woods, and she'll be back later. So they sort of wait around, and this is where Tom does a lot of his exposition, talks about his backstory, that he actually did see the devil once, or more precisely, the Crooked Man, because he was convinced to make a pact with him from another witch named Effie, who kind of seduced him to the dark side, and if he got a cat's bone for the Crooked Man, and the Crooked Man said it's his, because he met him with it, it's the first time he'd seen the devil, this is your lucky cat's bone now, and it'll protect you. But he basically made a deal with him, and that's kind of kept him safe. Although, because he was kind of shaken by the whole experience, he kind of made a choice to not actually do anything evil, and he's never used the bone to actually hurt anyone or anything like that. So it's like, okay, so he's kind of a noble character who regrets this thing in his past, yada, yada, yada. So that's,
Yeah, it's kind of funny, like, hearing like someone not really, familiar with the book explaining it, because it is like kind of a convoluted story. Like, it's not just like Hellboy fights the Crooked Man. Like, oh, like the Crooked Man wants this guy's soul and Hellboy has to save him. It's like, all right, so he wants to save his girlfriend who is like selling her soul to these witches, but then. So it's like she's kind of like a witch, but then there's also this other witch that originally seduced this guy, but then, neither of them are actually the Crooked Man. The Crooked Man's like this other guy. So it's like we're getting like lots of names and stuff thrown out, which you kind of mentioned it earlier, like about how, like, knowing the story and stuff, it might be easier to like have these gaps filled in, which I can fully acknowledge. Like, that might be why it's maybe a bit more enjoyable for me. I'm not just like being thrown like all this stuff at me and just being like, well, what is going on? Like, but I'm like, oh yeah, like I remember this from the comics. Like, I remember these characters and stuff. So
yeah, there was once or twice in this section where I had to go back 20 seconds just to hear like a paragraph again, because I just didn't take the information in. I'm like, wait, what did he just say? What's going on here? Ultimately, though, the Cora does come back. Like, I think it's a raccoon maybe that comes into the window and crawls into the skin, and she kind of reforms, which is, honestly, for this movie's budget, and it's clearly quite cheap, a pretty decent effect, all things considered, for this stuff. So credit where credit's due. But then Effie, the evil witch, shows up outside on a horse and starts being vaguely threatening, talking to Tom, talking to Hellboy, and ultimately it's like, hey, all the witches around here are trying to collect the soul of Cora for whatever reason, and this sort of prompts them to go seek in a church, because Satan and witches cannot go into a church. They're not allowed to. So that's kind of what their goal becomes for the next morning. That said, though, before we get onto that stuff, the horse that Effie's riding turns out to be Tom's father, who was turned into a horse years ago and dies in his arms after reuniting with his son. Yeah, this sounds pretty nuts when I'm saying it out loud like this, but honestly, it's pretty boring to actually watch. I really can't emphasize enough just how unengaged I was as this was played out.
I disagree. I mean, I like this stuff, but I mean, teach their own.
Yeah. So they're going to the church, and Cora never actually makes it. Like, she gets killed by like a demon snake or something. So I don't even know what the snake was supposed to be.
She kind of like flies up in the air, and like a snake comes out of her mouth, and then
whoa, it doesn't come out of her mouth. It comes out of her vagina. And then goes into her mouth.
Yeah, her bottom mouth.
Her bottom
is what yeah.
Her front bum.
And then and then the snake bites Hellboy, and then he gets this kind of like venomous, like induced. I don't know if you'd call it like a flashback, because I guess it's not something he experienced before, but he gets kind of like a vision of this other witch. So we have like another witch in the movie now, Sarah, who is actually like Hellboy's mother. And when it got to this stuff, and I'm like, oh, we're doing Hellboy having visions of his mother being tortured in hell for eternity, and being told that she's conceiving Hellboy, and and I'll be honest, I don't think the movie needs this. I mean, again, it's part of Hellboy's backstory, so again, as a fanboy, I'm like, oh, they're doing that thing from the comics, but it's not even something that they do in the Crooked Man story. So they kind of just pulled it from like other stuff. But I don't know. I didn't hate seeing it, but honestly, like I think you could have gotten rid of it and probably tightened the movie up a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even necessarily mind it conceptually. Again, like, that's just the thing I keep saying, is that I don't really have a problem with the ideas for the most part that are in the movie. And I think, if anything, if you'd spent more time with Hellboy as a character, I might have cared about him finally seeing his mother for like the first time, basically. And sort of wrestling with this idea of like, should I care that she's been tortured in hell? Should I want to save her? Should I want to do this? Blah, 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 blah. Like, there's potential in some of that, but the movie doesn't really give me enough to really care that much about it. Yeah, so they get to the church. There's a blind reverend who becomes kind of a recurring character from this point on. And I thought at this point it was going to turn into like a siege movie where it was just going to be them in the church for the rest of the movie. It ends up sort of like changing for the third act, but for the middle act, they're in the church. There's a lot of downtime where they're just kind of chatting to each other. But outside the church, Effie, the witch, shows back up. The Crooked Man shows up. And the big showdown is that they raise, like, basically all the dead people in the cemetery. If they've committed a sin, he's able to raise them. And because, like, the sin can be pretty minor, basically every single body's, brought to life. And becomes the demon horde, if you will, for Hellboy to start blasting his gun at.
Did you recognize who played the priest?
I did not, no. Who was it?
I mean, I don't know if you ever watched Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
I saw it occasionally, yes.
But the guy that plays the priest, he played the butler on that show.
Ah, okay.
So it's a little bit of a get for them.
A get.
Yeah.
The actor whose notable thing has been over for 30 years. That's the get. No disrespect to him. I just,
Yeah, I mean, again, this is all stuff from the comics, so it's all stuff I liked. But I mean, to me, I think this was probably the highlight of the movie. Like, I like the siege aspect to it. And, like, once, like the zombies and stuff, or whatever you call them, I guess, like, start popping up. Like, I thought there's like some fun action stuff, and the priest is like very like over the top, but I don't know, I kind of like that character. And then I think it's like a pretty badass moment when he basically, they take Tom's bone and the priest uses it to make a cross in the shovel, which kind of becomes like this big weapon that Hellboy can then use. So actually, I thought there was a lot of cool stuff here.
His lucky cat bone, to be precise. So just saying Tom's bone sounds a bit sounds a bit dirty. Let's not give the audience the wrong impression here. He basically christens a shovel to turn it into a super god shovel, and Hellboy starts hitting people with it, which is a fun idea. I don't know if I necessarily got that much out of this as an action sequence or like an Evil Dead style sequence, which is what I think it was going for tonally, was like Ash beating Deadites to a pulp kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know. I still have much to say about it. That was that was what I was like getting worried about halfway through this movie. I was like, I just don't think I've got much to say about this. Like, I feel so detached from it. I just don't, like, at least with something like an imaginary, like, I've got a lot to yell about. I don't think I've got anything to yell about in this. I'm just kind of like asleep, not literally asleep, but emotionally asleep.
And I guess it's funny on the opposite end. Like, I don't know if I have much to say either, because I mean, basically all I have to say is like, oh, this part was cool. I liked how they did this.
Tim had the Kleenex out. He was like wiping tears away from his eyes as his baby Hellboy was on screen. I mean, Tom considers like handing over the bone and sort of basically giving himself up and saying, "Hey, take me and don't hurt anyone else. So let's end this now." But Hellboy kind of holds him back and convinces him not to. The third act of the movie is that Hellboy and Tom go chasing after the Crooked Man, which leads to a mansion. and we get a lot of stuff of them like searching through the mansion, and like it starts getting a little bit surreal with like things attacking them. Hellboy starts having visions, almost kills himself with his gun because he thinks he's shooting at his demonic mother or whatever. And this intercuts with Bobby Joe, who's gone into the tunnels beneath all this like mountain area or these hills and forest area, and she finds the source of the Crooked Man's power and like destroys it with a spell. I'll be honest, this stuff felt a little, I don't know, like pulled out of the ass. I guess I'll say. I'm like, okay, you're telling me that'll work. I guess I'll just go along with it. And then in doing so, she also like it makes the spider who's down here, the big spider from earlier on is down here, and because this magic source is destroyed, that spider goes back to being normal size, and she's able to put it in a jar. And her whole thing, the whole movie is that she's not really a field agent; she's like a desk jockey, and this is like her chance to try and prove herself that she can do all this stuff. I mean, honestly, Adeline Rudolph, who plays Bobby Joe, is probably the most competent actor in the movie.
Yeah, I liked her. Yeah.
Yeah, I think she's been on TV shows and stuff. I feel like she's probably a bit more, versed, I guess, or just everyone else it felt like was either hamming it up or was like not really giving much emotion, or was like doing that student actor thing where they were just really like going for it. And know the director of this, by the way, like did the 2 Crank movies, which is basically his claim to fame.
Yeah, which like those movies are like, very nuts and over the top, and I remember watching them and being like, all right, I guess these are kind of fun for what they are or whatever. But I feel like everything, and I think it was 2 people that did those movies, right?
Oh, Crank? That might be right. Yeah, I don't know. I just saw it in his credits. I didn't click on the movie itself to.
Yeah, because I could be wrong, but yeah, because I don't know if like I want to say that after
you're
Crank,
right.
like,
yeah, you're right. They're co-directed and co-written. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, like I don't know, what attributes or something like falls onto each person or whatever. But like I feel like every time they've done a movie like after Crank, it's always been like, all right, like buckle up, this is gonna be crazy. It's from the Crank guys, and then it always just ends up kind of being like, oh, it's just kind of like a regular movie. It's like whatever.
F that.
yeah.
I mean, I really don't have a whole lot to say about the big climax to this movie. It just kind of because after Bobby Joe destroys the magic source or whatever you want to call it, which again I don't think was that well defined. Basically they just are able to fight the Crooked Man. Like Hellboy shoots his head off, and all the coins come dripping out because they established earlier on that every time he takes someone's soul for the Satan, he gets a coin so he can be rich again someday. So when they kill him, he's like a video game character who dies, where just coins start pouring out of his body.
I mean, again, just to show I'm not like totally biased or anything, like I do agree that there's like some third act problems here where it feels a bit lackluster, to where I would want it. Essentially, like after the magic thing or whatever gets like destroyed, like Hellboy just kind of pushes him down the stairs.
That's right.
Which is, it's kind of funny. Like, oh, like your big villain, he basically just like pushes down the stairs and then shoots in the head. It's like, that's it. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much it. And then the only like real other character stuff that's going on here, other than Tom now has a clear conscience, I guess. Is that there was one line from the Reverend where it felt like he was like reading minds or something, but he said that you mean more to Hellboy than you probably think, maybe implying that Hellboy, not so much that he has a crush on her per se, but he cares about her in a more loving way, perhaps, right? And the end of the movie kind of like has her kind of, I don't know, not replicate, but like they find a phone and they call in, like a helicopter, and the movie ends with her putting her head on his shoulder, and him sort of looking over, like, oh, like we've bonded. She's seeking comfort in me or something. Like it's very slight. There's not a lot to it. It's very it's not it's not like there's big speeches made or anything like that. There's not some big show of love or anything. It's just very simple and like, hey, we're not just colleagues. Like he cares about me. I'm going to return the feelings a little bit, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, I actually think it's like a little sweet, a nice little note. And then of course the big thing though we don't want to gloss over is that the other big witch in this, Effie Cobb, they basically she's kind of like powerless now, and then they put the horse bridle on her that she had used on Tom's father before. So now she's stuck in the as being a horse, and then they paint on the horse like "Beware, I'm a witch" or something like that. Which again was another like comic book thing, but I thought that was a nice little like turnaround for her.
Yep. I actually forgot earlier on that it was set in 1959, because when they first get to the house and they're like, hey, do you have a phone? And the woman gets really sarcastic, like, yeah, we've got a phone right next to all the Rolexes, and we've got a Mercedes Benz out in the, and she's basically, and I'm like, wait, a phone's not that like, and I'm like, oh, it's 1959, yeah. Okay, like poor people didn't have phones in their homes yet.
But it's funny because like the first thing she says, like, oh yeah, it's right there next to the color TV. Which, that was again, it, yeah. You think like, okay, color TV, that's not that bad, right? And then you're like, oh yeah, at that time, it'd be expensive.
Yeah, that's very much a of the time thing. Which is fair, but I think that's maybe part of the point though, is that other than those lines of dialogue, how much of this movie, I guess the fact that they don't have any like smartphones on them to just call for help, but like other than the fact that they don't have a phone, is there anything in this movie that actually places it in 1959? Really, I guess Tom's backstory being that he was in World War II, I guess kinda does, but there's nothing like aesthetically really that feels, oh, we're in a period piece right now,
Yeah, like the again, the only thing I can think of is like, I guess just being true to the comic book, and then and the only reason they really do it in the comic book is because like they were telling a chronological story of like Hellboy, and they got to a point basically like where Hellboy dies and goes to hell, but they kept which I think this might have been before that, but like still they wouldn't keep like telling these one-off stories or whatever, but there's like all this stuff that's going on with Hellboy that you can't really interrupt, so they basically just started doing like random stories like set in his time, coming up with like the BPRD. So you have these stories that just take place in like 1959, 1962, 1963 or whatever, which I don't know, it's kind of a smart move because like, oh yeah, you have your overarching storyline that isn't going to get interrupted or whatever, but if you have an idea for like just some random like we're talking about the X-Files, like random monster of the week or something that you want to do, you can just insert it anywhere. But yeah, as for the movie itself though, there really isn't any, I guess, specific point for having it set there.
Yeah, which isn't a big deal. It's just I was just something I was thinking about there as I was talking about those lines, and like, yeah, it was like one of the few things that actually reminded me we're in a different time period.
Yeah. And another kind of critique I have is again with the director. I think I do wish they would kind of dial back like the intensity, like sometimes like it's making me think about this like at the end, because there's just like with the way they do the music and stuff sometimes, like that shot you're talking about, like with like the helicopter and stuff, like she goes and like makes a call or whatever to have them get picked up, and then it just like cuts to the helicopter, but like with like the sound effects and stuff they do, like they make it sound like there's this big like threat or something that's coming up, but all it is just like him like staring out of the helicopter as they fly away. Like there's nothing like intense or anything about it. And I feel like there's other instances like that throughout the movie where the music is just constantly like reminding you that things are like intense and creepy, and I think it would have been done a little better if kind of dial it back and maybe just try to make it a bit more atmospheric instead of just constantly being like, oh, it's a horror movie, remember?
yeah, a bit try hard, maybe a way of putting it, or I think maybe like it almost feels like there's no confidence. Like you don't know how to build up an atmosphere and just have the silence be creepy. So you're trying to have the music and like maybe over the top camera shots and over the top editing try and make things more exciting than they actually are. And as a result, you have this disconnect from what the story actually is to what the films try to pretend that it is. And that kind of feels like a little just disingenuous, and you kind of feel this disconnect. And I think that's partly what makes it feel like it looks like a student film to me. Like, and it's something. And when I say it looks like a student film, I'm not even talking about the effects, because if anything, the effects are what makes it not a student film, because at least there's a little bit of money for these things. It's more just like how regular shots look. It's how they film the actors talking to each other and the way the dialogue is handled that makes it feel like a student film to me in a lot of ways. But
yeah, like a lot of times, like when they're walking through the woods and stuff, it's just like, oh yeah, it just looks like, people walking through the woods. Like there's not much of a cinematic quality to it,
Yeah, but with like a really shallow depth of field to try and like pretend that it does, and it's just, I don't know, there's like a weird disconnect. And it's funny because I was thinking like halfway through this that this really wants to be Hellboy's Dread, the Carl Urban Dread.
Oh, okay, yeah.
This wants to be the lower budget but truer to the source material movie. And obviously, Dread sadly tanked at the box office, so we never get any more of it. This, but Dread's beloved, though. People love that movie and sing its praises. And I don't think this, other than some delusional diehards like Tim here, I don't think most people are saying anything nice about this one. If they even saw it, which is a very valid thing to also add on, is that very few people have actually seen this movie.
I think I saw some article, which, I mean, again, maybe it was written by Hellboy fans. So I don't know if it's like Suspect or something, but like it did get on Hulu, and I think when it did, like and you see these articles all the time. I have no idea like if they mean anything, but it's like, oh, like, Hellboy Crooked Man is like #1 movie on Hulu right now. But it's like, I don't know. I never feel like that means anything, because it's like, okay, like, so does that just mean a couple of people like, watched a couple of minutes of it, or is it like people just will watch anything because like, well, this is the new thing that's on the streaming service I have,
I wouldn't put much stock into that, because like you say, like they'll like, oh, you've watched 10 seconds of it, that counts as a view. Like there's like, but how many people still watch to the end? That's the real question. So
or even if a lot of people watched it, do they like it? Like, like, I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean anything if they just happen to leave it. And who's to say they were even looking at the TV? They might have started the movie, said, this is shit, I'm going to go do the dishes, and it's still just playing in the other room. Like, you have no idea what the context for any of this is.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't really know if anyone liked a movie when they went to see it at the theater, but at least they paid for a ticket, so there's like a direct, we got money back for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Anyway, Tim, let's put us out of our misery.
Yeah.
What are you rating Hellboy the Crooked Man out of 10?
So, I mean, whatever, you just call me like a delusional fanboy, but I actually quite enjoy this movie. I recognize that it certainly has faults, and I'm coming at it from a very biased angle. So, I mean, take that for, what it's worth. Again, like, if you don't like the character, you have no interest in it, or aren't familiar with it, then yeah, the movie's probably not going to do much for you. But I mean, if you read the comics or like the other movies and have like at least a vague, interest in it, then I think it is actually worth checking out. And it is, again, if you kind of go in with a little bit of like hampered expectations, I think it might surprise you. Again, not everyone, because obviously, you didn't enjoy it. But like, I definitely think there'll be people out there that are like, oh, like this wasn't as bad as I thought it'd be. But again, maybe I was looking at it through fanboy eyes. But I mean, I'm not completely delusional. Like, as much as I would love to, just be complete over the top fan and give it like a 10 out of 10. Like, I can't, go that far. Like, I recognize that there's stuff to be desired. I mean, again, the budget's pretty low. Like you said, it just doesn't have that like, cinematic look. I mean, some of the other stuff you had problems with didn't bother me as much. Like, I actually quite enjoy the story. I agree some of the actors, could have been better, but they didn't necessarily bother me. I feel like it could have been tightened up, but I never necessarily like felt bored or anything by it. And then I wish maybe every now and again the director would kind of hold back and maybe not try to, make stuff like so like intense or whatever. So there's little things like here and there that I definitely think could have been tweaked, but again, I love Hellboy. It makes me happy to see him. There's this is based on one of my favorite stories, so there's a lot of things I liked and harken back to me. So I'm still gonna give it a pretty decent score. So I think I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10, which, I mean, maybe for this movie, some people think that's like wild. Like, I'm trying to go in between, like the fanboy me that loves everything Hellboy, and then the movie lover that can recognize that there's obviously like some faults, but I know I'm probably on the higher end of most people in this. But I do think, to me, it was still a good movie. Surprisingly, like, it's just not a complete like piece of shit as what I think a lot of people were expecting. But I actually quite enjoy this.
It's not as delusional as I thought it was going to be of a number. I thought you were going to be hitting me with like an 8 or a 9, and I was going to be making some faces. That said, though, my score is still much lower than yours.
I mean, again, it's like the fan of me would love to like, give it like an 8 or 9, but and as much as that would be kind of funny, but again, like there's enough like problems that even outside of my fanness that I can recognize, like, oh, it's not a perfect movie by any stretch, and I don't think, as much as I love like Hellboy the character in the franchise, and I would rate probably all the movies like somewhat high scores, but I mean, well, not the 2019 one, but again, I don't know, there's like a difference between like, oh, like this is one of my favorite movies, I really like it as a fan, and then as someone who likes movies, there's like a different score that you would give someone where you're like, okay, well, if I'm rating this as a fan, I think it's pretty fun, but as a movie person, you gotta, kind of set that aside, which I don't know. That's what kind of gets frustrating. I feel like sometimes with this landscape that's just dominated by like so much like comic book movies and stuff, where there's so many people that just unabashedly like love any like MCU movie or comic book movie that comes out, and they get upset and think you're like just a hater if you don't just love it like passionately or whatever. And I wish more people could like kind of put that stuff aside and be like, oh no, like I love this because I'm a fan of the character, or I like these comic books or whatever. But I'm sorry, especially like with the MCU stuff, but it's like but oh, they're doing like a lot of like crappy stuff, like just crappy storytelling and stuff. And maybe I'm being hypocritical because I don't recognize it as much in this movie as I do like when I watch Captain America Brave New World or something, and I'm like, oh god, this is awful. But I think it's hard as fans with these things, but I think it is still possible to set that stuff aside and give stuff a critical eye. But yeah, whatever.
I'm glad you're getting some things off your chest, Tim. But my score is, I think I'm going with a 3. Like, I do think it's bad. I think it's pretty dull. It's I did not enjoy watching it in any way, shape, or form. I really didn't. I didn't get anything out of it. I was mostly just kind of waiting until it was done at a certain point. It was kind of a soulless experience for me. It's kind of a shame, but like a sci-fi original movie, but without the tongue-in-cheek humor is kind of how I describe this, and that's Like the tongue-in-cheek humor doesn't save one of those, because those are pretty terrible and like tedious, because the tongue-in-cheek humor is just kind of lame. But I think describing this as that without that humor is actually a good way to describe it, honestly, in terms of presentation, the quality of the writing, and that doesn't make me happy to say that, but it is. What's funny is we were much more cordial about this than, say, something like The Boy, in which you do get delusional, and I just kind of, have to endure your nonsense, and we fight a little bit and whatnot, but hey, I guess we remain civil, much to the dismay of everyone during this. Maybe it's because I came into this knowing that Hellboy was so near and dear to you that I came in with kid gloves, be like, I'm going to be nice. I've got to refrain from making fun of him too much. But hey, there you go. There's the review of Hellboy.
No, I wasn't looking forward to it because I don't really like to argue, but I mean, luckily, yeah, like you said, we were both civil. It wasn't just an hour of you shitting on something I like. But I mean, I don't know. It's just, that's what you do. Like, you can kid around with your friends and stuff. Like, you don't always have to like the same things. So, it's fine.
Also, Tim's internet is doing all sorts of wonderful things this last 30 seconds. Luckily, we're right at the end of the show, though, so I can just kind of outro the whole thing now, and it won't matter too much. But yes, this has been Screams After Midnight. You can, of course, support us over at Patreon, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, and get some bonuses for your trouble. We do a little Even More Streams segment with most episodes now. And we get to bonus episodes here or there. There's a whole back catalogue of bonus episodes, of about 50 of them, if you want to dive into those. Plus, there's bonuses for all the other shows that we do, like the Science Fiction Podcast, the Atomic Cinema Experiment, Collector's Cut, where we're going through Superman season at the moment, because of the new Superman movie coming out. So if that sounds like fun, go check out all that stuff. But that is the show, everyone. And like I said, next week is going to be the top 10 movies, or top 10 horror movies of 2024. So yeah, patrons and YouTube members will get the making of the list, where we sit and debate it and decide the top 10. And the public episode will be the reveal of the top 10, and us kind of like justifying why we've made the picks we've made. And there was a lot of interesting horror movies out in 2024, so it should be an interesting list, perhaps with some passion behind it, possibly. Better than 2023's list, anyway, I certainly hope, because that was a pretty lukewarm affair. So, thank you for joining us, everyone. We do appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.